Uh, so, close reading, the primary meaning of the word close reading is the understanding of a text or an explanation of the text. Okay, it is called close reading because it is focused just on the piece of literature that we want to read. So, what meaning comes out of a particular text? That remains our focus when we read a text closely. So, as we see over here, the close reading is a kind of observation, taking note of what you read and what you think about it and asking questions. The text you are asked to read closely are usually not that long. Each time you read a text, you will notice more and more. So, the first thing about close reading is the first impression questions. So, here is a small extract that the writer wants us to have a look at. It is from My Antonia by Willa Cather. I hope you can see this text on the screen. It goes like this. I sat down in the middle of the garden where snakes could scarcely approach unseen and leaned my back against a warm yellow pumpkin. There were small ground cherry bushes growing along the furrows, full of fruit. I turned back the papery triangular sheets that protected the berries and ate a few. All about me, giant grasshoppers, twice as big as any I had ever seen, were doing acrobatic feats among the dried vines. The gophers scurried up and down the plowed ground. There in the sheltered draw bottom, the wind did not blow very hard, but I could hear it singing its humming tone up on the level, and I could see the tall grass wave. The earth was warm under me and warm as I crumbled it through my fingers. Queer little red bugs came out and moved in slow squadrons around me. Their backs were polished vermilion and with black spots. I kept as still as I could. Nothing happened. I did not expect anything to happen. I was something that lay under the sun and felt it, like the pumpkins. And I did not want to be anything more. I was entirely happy. Perhaps we feel like that when we die and become a part of something entire, whether it is sun and air or goodness and knowledge. At any rate, that is happiness, to be dissolved into something complete and great. When it comes to one, it comes as naturally as sleep. Published in 1918. So now what these are the first impressions, right? That we are going to have a look at just now. So after we read this piece, we get a sense of the tone or the mood it creates. That is the most primary thing that we come across in a literary text. What is the tone of the writer? And what mood that particular text creates? So you can also pay attention to who is the narrator, what is the setting, what are the themes. So here are a few questions which might come to your mind after reading the above passage. What part do the snakes play in this passage about happiness? What might it mean that passage is set in a garden? How big is that pumpkin? How big are the grasshoppers really? What makes the objects in the passage so vivid? Why does the narrator connect happiness and death? How does the narrator fit literally and figuratively into the landscape? How does the passage change from beginning to end. Now, all of you might not have the same questions in your mind after reading the above passage, but these are the possible questions. You might have a question which is not listed here as well, right? Now, I hope most of you understand the word narrator. We have discussed this word when we were discussing fiction. Now, here is a little activity. We have another literary text. The above text that we just read, it was a piece of narration, right? It was a narrative. It is part of a novel. And so far we have understood that when we engage in close reading, we pay attention to the content of what we read. We notice the tone, we notice the mood, we notice who's the narrator, what is the setting, and what are the themes. We are going to discuss close reading a little more with reference to a poem by A.E. Housman. And we can try to create our first impression questions based upon this reading. All right. So, students, are you ready to create the first impression questions?
Yes, sir.
They don't have to be right or wrong. They just have to be questions. We first will read this poem and then we will think of the possible first impression questions which come to our mind after reading the poem. So the poem goes like this: To an athlete dying young, A.E. Housman. The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you shoulder high. Today the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at thresher down, townsman of a stiller town. Smart lad, to slip betimes away from fields where glory does not stay. And early though the laurels grow, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night has shut, cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the ears. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honours out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set, before its echoes fade, the fleet foot on the sill of shade, and hold to the low lintel up, the still defended challenge cup, and round that early laurelled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its skulls the garland briefer than a girl's. The poem was written in 1896. Now, what are the first impression questions that you have about this particular poem? I mean, they are
Uh,
not questions to me or questions to anybody. These are questions to the poem. Yes, please.
Sir, how did the athlete die?
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, this is a possible question. I mean, its answer could be as simple as a natural death, right? We don't know the answer yet. Okay. These are just the questions. And the question will help us to uh, make a better sense of the poem. So it is one of the best strategies for close reading to have your first impression questions. That is a way to engage with the text. Okay, and this question does make sense from that perspective. How did the athlete die? Other first